What's up, guys, and welcome to Module 6 of the White Code Compass. I'm super excited about this module. I know I say that with every module, but every single module in this course is something critical that I think you need to know in order to have a successful pre-medical journey. So this one, Module 6, is going to be about finding trusted mentors and building your network. I think this is maybe the most overlooked, or at least most frequently overlooked aspect of a good pre-medical journey. I see so many people who are really just trying to ride solo. They just want to kind of keep to themselves, grind, work hard. And those people can be successful, don't get me wrong. But the old adage, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, is often more true in medicine than it is in other areas. And I would say that finding mentors, building a good network takes a lot off of your plate in terms of the things that you have to prove. Other people can speak on your behalf. Other people can give you guidance. Other people with expertise can show you the way, and you don't have to do everything yourself. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what a mentor is, define it. We're going to talk about what a mentor should be able to do for you. What is the ideal benefit that a mentor can provide? We're going to talk about how to find a mentor. We're going to talk about building relationships, and we're going to talk about letters of recommendation. So let's kind of dive right in. What is a mentor? Well, a mentor is just anyone who can give you advice during a season of your journey, a semester, a process, or some kind of opportunity. Typically speaking, mentors are going to have some degree of expertise in an area, and you're going to basically pick your mentors based on what it is that you're trying to learn from them, what it is you need to know, and choose them that way. So the thing about a mentor, though, is a mentor by definition is someone who has to have your best interest in mind. Here's the reason I bring this up. When I was a sophomore in college, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was going to be going to medical school. And I had already had a little bit of a rocky road. My father had passed away. I was looking to one of the advisors on my campus where I went to college, asking them for resources and information that I could use to help me study for the MCAT. And I had explained to them, the events that had transpired in my life just before that. And the person on the other side of the desk recommended to me that I choose a different career. They felt that I was too old to go into medicine. They felt like the things that had transpired in my life before that were probably going to prevent me from ever being able to go to medical school. And ultimately, the advice that they gave was, hey, pick a different career. There are other things out there. You can be a nurse. You can be a PA. Those things might be a little bit easier. In my opinion, this person was not a mentor. And suffice it to say, it doesn't matter how long I knew this person. This person was not a mentor because they did not have what I believe to be my best interest in mind. I knew that I was going to be a physician. And for that reason, only those who supported that decision would be people that I considered to have my best interest in mind. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we need difficult advice. Sometimes we need hard advice. Sometimes we need tough love. But it is rare that someone telling you to choose a different career than the career that you want is someone who has your best interest in mind. This is a common thing that I think happens to pre-medical students. Someone tells them, do something different with your life. And sometimes they heed that advice against their better judgment, and I encourage you to not do that. What else is a mentor? A mentor is someone who kind of understands what you're trying to accomplish. This plays right into that last thing. A mentor is going to understand what your objective is, why you have that objective, and they're going to support that objective. If you tell your mentor that you want to be a physician and they support you and they give you advice that helps you get there, that's a mentor. If you talk to someone and they tell you, well, if you're just trying to be a doctor, maybe the better thing is to be a PA because, the schedule's better and you don't have to be in school as long, whatever the case is. That person obviously doesn't understand what you're trying to accomplish. You have your reasons for wanting to become a doctor, and a mentor is going to understand that. Now, a mentor also has to have experience. They have to have experience in some area. They have to have been there and done that. I would argue that advisors and mentors are not the same thing. I would argue that advisors are people who have kind of a plug and play modality for teaching students what they think they need to know. A mentor is someone who has been there and done that and is going to give you advice that helped them in the process. For example, A mentor may be a physician that you know. A mentor may be a medical student that you know. A mentor may be an upperclassman that you know who has taken the classes that you've taken. A mentor may be someone who has done the research that you are doing. A mentor may be someone who you work with at your volunteer opportunity. The list goes on. A mentor has experience in the thing that you are trying to accomplish. And lastly, but certainly not least, a mentor is someone who will be honest with you. This goes a little bit against what I set up here. Well, really not that, more so this, but someone who is honest with you is someone who can actually help you get where you're going. You need someone who will tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. If a person is not able to be honest with you, they're not a mentor. Maybe they're an advisor, but they're certainly not a mentor. I would also argue that a mentor should be able to offer advice for a decision that you need to make. In order to, I think, in order to have the ability to offer good advice, a mentor does need that experience that I mentioned on the last slide. A mentor also needs to be able to clarify a situation with new information. Maybe there's something you want to do. Maybe there's an opportunity that's in front of you. A mentor is going to be able to give you new information about a situation and help you clarify it. A mentor is going to connect you with other people who could help you, maybe even connect you with other mentors. A mentor is going to be able to tell you when you're making a mistake, right? A mentor is going to be able to be honest with you and tell you when you have maybe bit off more than you can chew. Maybe you need to cut back. Maybe you need to try a different approach, things like that. And lastly, I think a mentor should be able to vouch for you. And really what I'm referring to here is either letters of recommendation for opportunities that you may be looking for, not just letters of recommendation for medical school, but letters of recommendation for scholarship programs, for research, the list goes on, or just word of mouth. Maybe, Bob knows Sue and Bob knows you, and you want to do this opportunity that Sue is offering. Well, maybe Bob can vouch for you with Sue because Bob knows you. A mentor should be able to do that. Now, big question, right? How do you actually find a mentor? Well, I encourage you to consider first, you should find your mentors based on the expertise that they can provide, right? I'll give you an example of this. A vet student who recently graduated from your college, who recently took organic chemistry 2 and biochemistry and these other tough classes, that person may be a great mentor for helping you through organic chemistry and biochemistry. They may be a good mentor for helping you find research, but they're probably not a good mentor for helping you get into medical school, right? Because that is a different kind of process, veterinarian school. So you're going to find your mentors based on the experience that they actually have. And for that reason, I encourage people really, when you're first starting out with mentors, only take advice from those people who have been where you are. And even then you may have to be selective because processes change over time. For example, the doctor who is 75 years old may not understand the medical school application process as well as the doctor who is, 27 or 28 years old. Or the medical student who just got in, who's 23 or 24 years old. I also encourage people to have multiple mentors for various aspects of their journey. You may have a mentor for research. You may have a mentor for medical school. You may have a mentor for your classes. The list goes on. You can have a mentor for just about everything. I would estimate that I have probably had somewhere between 12 and 15 mentors over the course of my life. Some of them temporary, transient. Others have been more long-term. Depending on what role they were actually filling. And lastly, I kind of touched on this already, but be careful of advice that does not come from a place of experience. A lot of people have opinions about what you should be doing. A lot of people have opinions about what they think you should do in various situations. Be careful of advice that does not come from a place of experience, because sometimes those opinions that people have are unfounded and they're not actually in your best interest and they don't actually make sense for you. Now, in addition to that, where should you actually go to find mentors? Well, professors are an excellent place to start. Professors are, in my opinion, one of the best people to get you connected to opportunities. They're some of the best people to get you connected to research. They're some of the best people to give you general advice about your college experience. They may not be the best people to give you advice about medical school. They may not be the best people to give you advice about that part of your process, but there are almost always things that professors can do for you as a mentor. And perhaps they're not always science professors. Many times they are, but there are certainly things that a non-science professor can do for you. They can give you great life advice, general life advice that may actually be very helpful to you. Also, speak to the upperclassmen. Stay connected with those guys. Stay connected with the juniors and seniors and the postbacks and the people who have kind of been where you stood, and especially been where you stood recently. Find a graduate or alumni, somebody who just finished up, somebody who may have moved on to other things like graduate school, who may have moved on to a master's, things like that. Those people often have great advice about transitions, how to move from graduation into a new opportunity, how to move from graduation into a gap year, what kind of things you can be doing with your time in those points of your journey. And then, of course, talk to graduate students and medical students, especially medical students. Medical students, especially ones who went to your university, if possible, are going to have excellent advice about people you need to talk to, about opportunities you need to look at, and they're going to be some of the best people to speak to about good current advice that makes sense for the context that you're in. So this last thing here, building relationships, this is really about kind of the framework of the mindset that you need to have when it comes to forming relationships with these people. You have to focus on genuine connections and not transactions. You have to understand that some people do actually want to help you just for the sake of helping you, and they don't need anything in return. And it's good to be able to receive that support. You should probably aim for long-term relationships and not one-time favors. Long-term relationships pay dividends. The more you get to know someone and the longer you know them, in my opinion, the more that they can do for you and the more that that relationship can do for them. Check in periodically. Check in rather frequently, every few months. Send an update or a thank you email after a project or a class or a recommendation, and then just stay in touch. I recently, in the past few months, went to go see my organic chemistry professor from college, and we had fallen out of touch for a while, but actually he was able to give me some great advice that I needed for something that was going on in my life just by pure happenstance. So there's value in staying in touch because you never know how people can help you in the various stages of life that you're in. Jump on LinkedIn, find these people on there, and again, stay in touch, not just when you need them, but just for the sake of staying in touch. I also encourage people to build horizontal connections. That's peers who grow with you. Find people who are serious about the path that you're on and help them, support them, grow with them. And of course, those vertical connections are mentors who can guide you. So those are really two different types of relationships, the horizontal and the vertical. In general, be reliable, be curious, be proactive, follow through on the things that you say you're going to do. That is how relationships are sustained and built, is you ultimately foster the relationship through that kind of activity. Help peers with what you have already learned. Be a mentor for someone else, right? It strengthens both your knowledge and your reputation. And your reputation is an extraordinarily important aspect of your journey. Lastly, I want to touch on letters of recommendation. Letter writers are almost always people who have mentored you in some fashion. It is rare that you will get a great letter of recommendation from someone who simply knows you from a course that you took. It is more than likely somebody who knows you quite well from a project that you worked on, research, volunteer, whatever. Letter writers have mentored you in some form or fashion. In my opinion, in order to be good letter writers, they must have mentored you in some form or fashion. Why? Well, the ideal letter and the ideal letter writer is someone who can speak to multiple aspects of you, your work ethic, your character, your competence. If you just took a class from somebody, they may be able to talk about your competence and your work ethic, but they may not be able to speak about your character. But if you do research with someone, they may have gotten to know you well enough to be able to speak about your character. And so again, this is all about what is the context of your relationship with this person? How well do they really know you? Some administrative things about letters. You need to ask letter writers for their support long before you need it. How long? I would argue upwards of 6 months. For example, if you want to apply to medical school in May, I recommend that people start talking to letter writers at the end of the previous semester, right? December, maybe early January at the earliest. You want to kind of put the bug in these people's ear that you're interested in their support. And you need to specifically ask for a strong letter and make it known that you want only the best support. And I've asked letter writers point blank, I need to know if you are willing to write me a very strong letter of recommendation. If you are not, I would like to move on to someone else. And if they are willing to support you in that way, they will let you know. Make sure to have your CV updated and organized. It is very common for letter writers to ask for an updated copy of your CV. They're going to talk about different things that are on your CV and kind of integrate them and weave them into what they know about you. Make sure it's updated, make sure it's organized, make sure it's easy to use. Now, a little bit of a bonus. What actually makes a great letter? How do you know you've gotten a good letter of recommendation? Well, you don't get to read them, generally speaking, although for certain smaller opportunities, you may actually be able to read letters of recommendation written on your behalf, but certainly not the ones that are written to you for medical school in most cases. Good letters are highly personalized. They refer to specific things about you, not just generic things about you. Letter writers or good letters rather, are highly specific. They talk about specific events, experiences. They talk about interactions. They talk about things that somebody knows about you specifically that are not necessarily applicable to others. Again, great letter writers, or rather, great letters speak to multiple qualities of you: your work ethic, your character, your competence, your intelligence, things like that. A good letter is going to refer to all these different things, which is, again, why it has to come from someone who really knows you. And again, great letters are going to show your growth over time. Somebody who has known you for quite some time is going to be able to reflect on how you have grown as a person and how you have evolved in the different aspects of your college career that you're involved in. And if a person hasn't known you very long, they will not be able to attest to this. So these are things that I think are almost non-negotiable in a good letter. And it is these things that can help you decide who to ask for your letters from. If you can get a letter that does these things from someone, they're probably a good letter writer and they probably know you well. And so that's it, guys. That's the high yield for finding trusted mentors and building relationships. And we'll see you in the next module.